During World War II, one German military commander earned a reputation that made him famous across both Allied and Axis armies. His name was Erwin Rommel, and he became known as the Desert Fox. Rommel gained his reputation while commanding German forces in North Africa, where his leadership and battlefield tactics surprised many of his enemies. Even Allied soldiers respected his ability to lead troops and launch bold military maneuvers. In the harsh deserts of North Africa, Rommel led German and Italian forces against the British Army in a series of fast, moving battles involving tanks, artillery, and aircraft. His aggressive tactics and quick decision-making often allowed his forces to outmaneuver larger enemy armies. For a time, Rommel became one of the most successful German commanders of the war. However, the story of the Desert Fox would eventually take a dramatic turn as the war continued. In 1941, Germany sent Erwin Rommel to North Africa to support Italian forces that were struggling against the British Army. Rommel was placed in command of the newly formed Afrika Korps, a German military force designed to strengthen Axis operations in the region. From the moment he arrived, Rommel quickly launched bold attacks against British positions. His strategy relied on speed and surprise, using tank divisions to strike enemy forces before they could organize strong defenses. The desert battlefield of North Africa created unique challenges for both sides. Extreme heat, sandstorms, and long supply routes made the campaign extremely difficult. Despite these challenges, Rommel's leadership helped the Afrika Korps achieve several early victories against Allied forces. As the North African campaign continued, Erwin Rommel quickly gained a reputation as one of Germany's most skilled battlefield commanders. His ability to move forces quickly across the desert allowed him to launch sudden attacks against enemy positions. Rommel often led his troops from the front lines, personally observing battlefield conditions and directing attacks. This leadership style made him popular among many of the soldiers under his command. His success in North Africa led to the nickname the Desert Fox, a name used to describe his clever tactics and ability to outmaneuver his opponents. However, despite his early victories, the campaign in North Africa would eventually become more difficult as Allied forces increased their strength in the region. By 1942, the war in North Africa had reached a critical moment. Erwin Rommel and his Afrika Korps had pushed Allied forces deep into Egypt and were approaching the strategic city of Alexandria and the Suez Canal. However, the British Army had prepared strong defensive positions near a small town called El Alamein. This location became the site of one of the most important battles of the North African campaign. At El Alamein, the British Army launched a powerful counterattack against Rommel's forces. British troops, supported by large numbers of tanks, artillery, and aircraft, attempted to stop the Axis advance once and for all. The battle soon became one of the largest and most intense desert battles of World War II. Despite Rommel's leadership and tactical skill, the situation for Axis forces in North Africa was becoming increasingly difficult. Allied forces had gained stronger supply lines and were receiving large amounts of equipment and reinforcements. During the Second Battle of El Alamein, British forces under General Bernard Montgomery launched a massive offensive against the German and Italian armies. The attack involved thousands of soldiers, tanks, and artillery pieces. Axis forces fought fiercely, but they were eventually forced to retreat as Allied troops continued pushing forward across the desert battlefield. This defeat marked a major turning point in the North African campaign. For the first time, Rommel's forces were pushed into a long retreat across the desert. After the defeat at El Alamein, Axis forces in North Africa were forced to retreat westward across Libya and Tunisia. Allied armies continued advancing while launching additional attacks against the retreating Axis forces. At the same time, American and British troops landed in North Africa during Operation Torch, opening a new front against German and Italian forces. Caught between two advancing Allied armies, Axis forces eventually lost control of the region. By 1943, the North African campaign had ended with the defeat of German and Italian forces. Rommel was later recalled to Europe as the war continued on other fronts. After the defeat of Axis forces in North Africa in 1943, Erwin Rommel returned to Europe, where he was given new responsibilities by the German High Command. As Allied forces prepared for a possible invasion of Western Europe, Rommel was assigned to help strengthen the German defenses along the Atlantic coast of France. Rommel worked on building a system of coastal defenses known as the Atlantic Wall, which included bunkers, artillery positions, and obstacles designed to stop Allied landing forces. German commanders believed that the Allies would eventually attempt a large invasion somewhere along the French coastline. Rommel warned that Germany needed to stop the invasion immediately on the beaches because once Allied forces established a foothold, it would be difficult to push them back. His warnings would soon become important as the war moved toward one of its most famous battles. As the war turned against Germany, some German military officers began secretly discussing plans to remove Adolf Hitler from power. These officers believed that continuing the war would lead to complete destruction for Germany. Rommel was aware that many senior officers were losing confidence in Hitler's leadership, although historians still debate how deeply Rommel was involved. He was connected to discussions among officers who wanted to end the war and negotiate peace. In July 1944, a group of German officers attempted to assassinate Hitler in what became known as the July 20 plot. The attempt failed, and the German government launched a massive investigation to identify everyone connected to the conspiracy. During this investigation, Rommel's name was mentioned by several officers who had been arrested. In October 1944, Erwin Rommel was confronted by German officials who accused him of being connected to the plot against Hitler. Because Rommel was one of Germany's most famous generals, the government did not want to publicly arrest and execute him. Instead, he was given a difficult choice. Rommel could face a public trial that would likely lead to execution and punishment for his family, or he could take his own life and receive a state funeral as a national hero. Rommel chose the second option. On October 14, 1944, he took poison and died shortly afterward. The German government announced that he had died from wounds suffered earlier in the war. Today, Erwin Rommel remains one of the most well-known military commanders of World War II, remembered both for his battlefield leadership and the complex role he played during the war.